It's midnight and you're doom scrolling real estate listings again, and every property that isn't falling apart is somehow $500,000. The countertops are cracked laminate from 2 decades ago. The carpet is that sad builder grade beige. There's water damage in the basement painted over and called character. And somehow the listing still calls itself a starter home. Meanwhile, you're doing mental math on your paycheck, wondering if you slept through a huge raise or if the entire housing market has just lost the plot. Spoiler, it's not you, it's the math. And going into 2027, the math is about to get even uglier. Today, we're breaking down something realtors really don't want spelled out. Who can actually afford a $500,000 house heading into 2027? Not who a bank will approve for a loan, who can afford it without their entire life turning into one long financial panic attack. Because getting approved for a mortgage and being able to actually sleep at night after signing it are two completely different things. The uncomfortable baseline. Let's start with reality. In market after market across the country, $500,000 isn't a nice house anymore, so it's the entry fee. That number buys you something like 1,100 square feet, 2 bathrooms, 3 cramped bedrooms, and a backyard roughly the size of a parking space. In growth cities and anywhere near a major metro, $500,000 is just what an ordinary house costs now. Median household income going into 2027 is hovering somewhere around $86,000. So the system is asking a household earning $86,000 to pay for a home worth nearly 6 times their yearly income. If that ratio makes your stomach turn a little, that's the correct reaction, but everyone around you keeps insisting it's doable. The loan officer says you qualify. Your parents remind you they bought a house on a fraction of that salary. Some 24-year-old on your feed is house hacking with zero money down. So what's actually going on? What's going on is that almost everyone talking to you about this has a financial incentive to make it sound easier than it is. Where the dream usually dies first, the down payment. Old school advice says put 20% down on a $500,000 house. That's $100,000 in cash, sitting there before you even talk to a lender. The average American savings account holds somewhere around $8,500. You're not just short, you're roughly $91,500 short. Say you commit to saving your way there. If you're earning $86,000 and manage to save an aggressive 10% of your gross pay, which almost nobody actually pulls off, that's about $8,600 a year. At that pace, you're looking at over a decade just to hit the down payment, and that's assuming home prices sit still, which they never do. So most people give up on 20% and put down 5% or 10% instead. Congratulations. You've just unlocked private mortgage insurance, better known as PMI. This is a monthly fee that exists purely because you weren't wealthy enough to put down a fifth of the purchase price upfront. It typically runs $200 to $450 a month, and it protects the lender, not you. You're paying extra every month for the privilege of being an acceptable risk. Building the real monthly number, say you scrape together 10% down, $50,000. You're financing $450,000. Heading into 2027, rates are still sitting in that stubborn mid to high 6% range depending on your credit, which puts your principal and interest payment somewhere around $2,900 to $3,000 a month. And that's before anything else that comes with actually owning the house. Property taxes typically run $4,500 to $8,500 a year depending on where you live. Call it roughly $550 a month on the conservative end. Homeowners insurance has climbed fast the last several years thanks to more frequent extreme weather, so add another $275 to $375 a month depending on whether you're in a flood zone, a wildfire zone, or hurricane territory. Then there's maintenance. The category everyone forgets exists until the water heater floods the hallway on a Sunday night. The standard rule of thumb is roughly 1% of your home's value every year. On a $500,000 house, that's about $5,000 annually or $420 a month. Add the PMI back in, call it $325. Total it up, mortgage $2,950, taxes $550, insurance $325, maintenance $420, PMI $325, your real monthly housing cost lands around $4,570. And that number assumes absolutely nothing goes wrong. No surprise roof, no HOA special assessment, no emergency anything. Reverse engineering the income. You'd actually need. Most financial planners will tell you housing shouldn't eat more than 28% of your gross monthly income. Banks, meanwhile, will approve you as long as your total debt load stays under roughly 43%. Run that $4,570 monthly housing cost backward through the conservative 28% rule, and you need to be earning close to $196,000 a year. Use the looser bank-approved 43% rule instead, and you still need somewhere around $158,000 annually. And here's the punchline. Only around 10 to 20% of American households clear $150,000 a year, which means, under any reasonable definition of afford, something like 80% of households are locked out of a $500,000 house. That's not an opinion. That's just what the numbers say. A household, actually trying to make it work. You might be thinking, people are still buying these houses, so who are they? Some are dual income households in high-paying fields. Some have family help, and some are stretched so thin that a single bad month could wreck them entirely. Let's build out a real example. Call them the Alvarez household. 2 working professionals bringing in a combined $165,000 a year. That's comfortably upper middle class on paper. They should be fine, right? After federal tax, state tax, payroll tax, and a modest retirement contribution, their actual take-home lands around $9,700 a month. Subtract the $4,570 housing cost we calculated, and they're left with roughly $5,130 for everything else in their lives. 2 commuter car payments, $850. Insurance on both vehicles, $260. Gas, because nothing near them is walkable, $320. Leftover student loan payments, $550. Health insurance premiums their jobs don't fully cover, $420. Groceries for 2 adults trying to eat reasonably well, $750. Utilities for a bigger house, electric, water, internet, phones, $460. That leaves about $1,520 a month for absolutely everything else. Clothing, entertainment, car repairs, medical copays, kids' activities if they have any, and whatever's left for savings or retirement beyond that small 401k contribution. Good luck. This household, 2 professionals making $165,000 combined, is spending 47% of their take-home pay just to keep the lights on in this house. Not the recommended 28%, not even 35%, nearly half. And they're not reckless people. They're not buying jet skis. They're just living in a house the market decided was normal. What that actually feels like. It feels like checking your account balance before you grab groceries. It feels like telling your kid no to a $40 field trip because that money might be needed if the check engine light comes on. It feels like lying awake doing math about whether the tires can wait 1 more month. It feels like being 1 bad week from a crisis permanently. The AC compressor dies. That's $4,500 you don't have. Someone rear-ends you and your deductible is $1,200. Onto the card it goes. Your kid needs braces. Now you're financing dental work like it's a used car. That's the reality for a household making $165,000 trying to carry a $500,000 house. Now, picture what it looks like for a household making $130,000, or $100,000, or the actual median of $86,000. At median income, a $500,000 house isn't tight. It's not even a stretch. It's fiction. It doesn't work without major outside help or a level of risk that should make anyone nervous. Why nobody in the room tells you this. Here's the part that makes this genuinely messed up. The market doesn't care about any of these numbers. Sellers list at $500,000 because that's what comparable homes sold for. Banks approve you at a 43% debt ratio because, technically, the loan probably won't default in year 1. Agents encourage you to stretch because their commission depends on the deal closing. Nobody sitting across the table from you has any incentive to say this will drown you. The entire system is built to get you into the house, not to make sure you can actually afford to live in it 5 years later. And once you've signed and moved the furniture in, you're stuck. Walking away 6 months later means wrecking your credit and losing everything you put down. So people just stay. They stay in houses they can't really afford, in jobs they've outgrown, because they can't risk any disruption to their income, quietly watching their savings shrink while wondering why living the dream feels this stressful. The actual numbers behind the myth. For somewhere around 70 to 80% of American households, a $500,000 home going into 2027 simply isn't sustainably affordable. Not without accepting a level of financial fragility that would have been considered reckless a generation ago. This isn't about working harder or budgeting better. It's a housing market that's completely detached from what people actually earn. Home prices have climbed roughly 400% since the early 90s. Median income over the same stretch is up something like 180%. That gap doesn't close with a better spreadsheet. You can't skip enough lattes to bridge a six-figure hole. You can't side hustle your way into a down payment when rent already eats 40% of your paycheck. And you definitely can't think your way to a lower interest rate. What you can do is actually look at the real numbers before you commit a decade of your life to them. What this means for you: if you're eyeing a $500,000 house right now and your household income is meaningfully under $145,000, it's worth pausing. Not because you're incapable, because the math itself is working against you, regardless of what a lender is willing to sign off on. Here's what it looks like when people push forward anyway. Month 1, the payment is tight but manageable. Month 3, you're skipping the gym membership and cooking every meal at home, but you're holding on. Month 5, the brakes go out. $750 you didn't have straight onto a card. Month 8, the AC dies midsummer, and the $3,800 repair gets financed too. Month 11, a partner's hours get cut, and suddenly you're $700 short every single month with an emergency fund that never had the chance to exist in the first place. That's what being house poor actually looks like. You technically own a house though. For the next 30 years, the bank owns most of it, and you can't afford to enjoy it, maintain it, or breathe in it. Every unplanned expense becomes a crisis. Every decision runs through the filter of, can we still make the payment? The culture problem. The strange part is how normalized this misery has become. Can't furnish half your rooms? That's just part of the journey. Eating the cheapest possible dinner because everything went to the mortgage? You're building equity. We've quietly rebranded financial strain as a rite of passage instead of naming it as a symptom of a broken system. The math is shouting the truth, but the culture keeps whispering, buy anyway. Your parents bought at your age, sure, but their house cost 3 times their income, not 6 times yours. Your friends are buying too, but you have no idea what their finances actually look like behind a fresh coat of paint. And renting gets called throwing money away, while somehow a mortgage you can barely make isn't described the same way, even though it comes with worse consequences. Permission to opt out. You're allowed to look at this whole equation and simply decline to play. You can keep renting and invest the difference. You can look at a $375,000 house instead, even if the commute gets longer. You can accept that home ownership in your specific market isn't realistic for you right now. And that's not a personal failure. That's an accurate read of a distorted system. Real financial security was never really about owning a house you can barely afford. It's having breathing room in your budget. It's being able to invest consistently without white-knuckling every paycheck. It's not choosing between fixing the roof and funding your retirement account. It's sleeping through the night without running numbers in your head. The financial and real estate industries have done a remarkably good job convincing everyone that buying always beats renting, that stretching is normal, that prices only go up, but every party in that transaction profits when you buy the lender, the agent, the insurer. Nobody in that room makes a cent when you say, this doesn't work for me right now. The bottom line, heading into 2027, if you're feeling priced out, like home ownership is slipping further away every year, understand this: you're not the one failing. Wages simply haven't kept pace with home prices, and what used to be a normal milestone has quietly become a luxury item for most people. A $500,000 house isn't a starter home. It isn't comfortably affordable at a median income. It isn't something to stretch for unless your numbers genuinely support it without gymnastics. Run your real numbers, be honest about your income stability, and if it doesn't add up, walk away. There's no shame in saying it doesn't make sense right now, and there's no medal for buying a house that quietly makes you miserable for a decade. This isn't a case against home ownership forever. It's a case against pretending a $500,000 house is within reach just because a bank is willing to sign the paperwork. A lender's risk tolerance and your actual quality of life are not the same calculation. Maybe your income climbs. Maybe price is correct. Maybe you end up somewhere that $500,000 actually buys real space. But right now, heading into 2027, for most people this math is broken, and pretending otherwise doesn't make you optimistic. It just makes you a future cautionary story. So stop asking what you qualify for and start asking what you can actually live with. Find the number where you can cover the mortgage, handle the surprises, still save something, still invest something, and still remember what it feels like to not think about money every single day. For most people, that number isn't anywhere close to $500,000. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're not less successful for being realistic. You're just doing the math that everyone else keeps avoiding.